Hi everybody, this is the first video being made by the People's Channel, so I feel I need to explain what it is and why it's being made. So why is this called the People's Channel? Well, firstly this is because I'm an ordinary person just like you guys. By that I mean I'm not a politician with an agenda, like feathering my own nest or feeding my ego or getting a kick out of power and control. Neither am I a CEO of a corporation with agendas like tax avoidance and striving for encouraging cheap labour to make greater profits. I'm not a professor at any university, working to change the way people think, so overall the population is easier to control, distorting historical facts about our country, and teaching an agenda which is misleading and unhealthy. I was just going about my life up until about a year and a half ago, and I lived in the lovely world of La La Land. I occasionally caught the news on BBC, ITV or Sky, and like everyone else tutted about the depressing and horrible things that seemed to be going on in the world. But, as I found out to my horror, I never questioned the information that was being given out. Well, why should I? Auntie Beeb has been going as long as I can remember, and it never occurred to me that it might be telling me lies. It really never occurred to me. Am I talking about you and me and the millions of others, all the same? We tend to simply accept what those who we see as experts tell us. We don't question. We don't question our teachers, our doctors, our academics, those with a ton of intellectual-sounding qualifications. A world news service that's been going for donkey's years, which we understand is there to report the news to us. We trust them, pretty much without question. Do we trust politicians? I would say that if you asked 1,000 people that question, probably 90% or more would say no. Lying scumbags. But, and here's the big but, do we ever bother to investigate these lies? We accept that they are mostly liars just lining their pockets at our expense. And every 5 years we go through the farce of picking whichever set of politicians we think are the ones who are lying the least. However, do we ever consider that the lies we are being told may be a danger to us, to our families, to future generations? And these days, it's not just lies, it's the things that they don't tell us, deliberately. I know I didn't realise any of these things until one day I was faced up with 3 words: the European Union. If we go back to basics, I'm going to hammer you a bit with quotes that have been going on for years and years and years behind your backs. And so I'm going to start with some. Get a load of these. A conference held in 1944 was entitled "How Germany Will Dominate the Peace When It Loses the War." Unbelievable. Here's a quote. "We are working discreetly, and all the time we are denying with our lips what we are doing with our hands." Arnold Toynbee, historical researcher and founding father of the European Union. Here's another one. "The fusion of economic functions would compel nations to fuse their sovereignty into that of a single European state." Jean Monnet, another founder of the European Union, on the 3rd of April, 1952. Now, for those of you who are slightly confused about the word sovereignty, I thought I'd just give you the dictionary definition, because a lot of us think it's to do with the Queen, but actually, yes, sure, the Queen is the sovereign, but the word sovereignty actually means the authority of a state to govern itself or another state. National sovereignty and the synonyms for it are autonomy, independence, self-government, self-rule, home rule, self-legislation, the ability to make our own laws for our own country, self-determination, non-alignment and freedom, a self-governing state. Okay, here's another gem. "It is well to state this at the outset. no government on a democratic vote could possibly agree in advance to the sacrifices which any adequate plan for European Union could involve. The people must be led slowly and unconsciously into the abandonment of their traditional economic defences. No satisfactory economic plan for Europe can be devised without sacrifice of sovereignty by the nations concerned. Peter Thornycroft, MP, June 1947. Here's one from Edward Heath in 1972. There is no question of ending any national sovereignty. There is no blueprint for a federal Europe. There are some in this country who fear that in going into Europe we shall in some way sacrifice independence and sovereignty. These fears, I need hardly say, are completely unjustified. He later admitted to lying both to Parliament and the British people. The same Edward Heath in 1990, in response to the question, "Did you have in mind a United States of Europe in 1972?" replied, "Of course, yes." On trade, above all, the European Economic Community takes away Britain's freedom to follow the sort of economic policies we need. Tony Blair, when standing for Parliament in 1982. I would just like to add here that all these years down the track, the European Union now has such a stranglehold on our country that we've lost our seat on the World Trade Organization. Nowadays, a member of the European Union sits in our seat and makes trade deals on behalf of Britain. Who do you think is more qualified to know what kind of trade Britain needs to push its economy forward? A British person living in Britain, or a member of one of the other 27 member states that make up the present-day European Union? Remember, these member states are places like Italy, Bulgaria, Romania, France. I don't know who sits on our seat in the World Trade Organization. I don't know which country they come from. It's someone in the European Union. Would a person from one of these countries seriously understand what we need in Britain? Okay, here's another one. We'll negotiate a withdrawal from the EEC, which has drained our natural resources and destroyed jobs. Tony Blair again, when standing for Parliament in 1997. And then again, Tony Blair speaking to the European Union in 2005. I am a passionate pro-European. I always have been. Oh, what a liar. Here's a really bad one. We know that 9 out of 10 people will not read the Constitution. This is referring to the Constitution of the European Union, which is contained in the Lisbon Treaty, signed by Gordon Brown and David Miliband, on behalf of Britain. So let's just go back. We know that 9 out of 10 people will not read the Constitution and will vote on the basis of what politicians and journalists say. More than that, if the vote is no, the vote will probably have to be done again, because it absolutely has to be yes. Jean-Luc Dehaene, former Belgian Prime Minister and Vice President of the EU Convention, Irish Times, 2nd of June 2004. Now again, for those of you who are not quite sure what a constitution really means, let's clarify that with a definition from the dictionary. So it means a body of fundamental principles or established precedents, laws, according to which a state or other organization is acknowledged to be governed. So here's a really, really bad one. The time for individual nations in Europe having its own tax, employment and social policies is definitely over. We must finally bury the erroneous ideas of nations having sovereignty over foreign and defence policies. National sovereignty will soon prove itself to be a product of the imagination. Gerhard Schroeder, Chancellor of Germany, January 1999. How horrific is that? This quote is saying, we have to abandon all thought of being able to make our own tax policies, our own employment policies, our own social policies, our own foreign policy, and worst of all, our own defence policies. And the thought that we can make our own laws and we have our own parliament who make those laws for our country will soon prove itself to be a product of the imagination. Well, not in my mind, I don't know about you guys, but no way. Okay, now referring to the Constitution of the European Union. Our Constitution cannot be reduced to a mere treaty for cooperation between governments. Anyone who's not yet grasped this fact deserves to wear the dunce's cap. Thanks. Valéry Giscard, President of the EU Convention, speech in Aachen, accepting the Charlemagne Prize for European Integration, 29th of May 2003. Well, I don't know about you, but I sort of object to being called a dunce when I didn't even know any of this was going on. And it's all been hidden. And nobody talks about it. Do you hear any of your politicians talking about any of this? No, you don't. They're hiding it from you. You've been duped. Okay, last one. Creating a single European state bound by one European constitution is the decisive task of our time. German Foreign Minister Rups Joschka Fischer, The Daily Telegraph, 27th of December 1998. When I first thought about doing these information videos, I decided they should be about 4 to 7 minutes long. Sorry about that, but please stick with me for a few more minutes. The next ones I will try to make shorter. Incidentally, I will put links for these quotes and anything else that I use in the comments box underneath this video, so that if you want to verify them for yourselves, you can. There are hundreds of them and they will shock you. So in summary, I have now discovered that many decades ago there were plans afoot to form one European state, which has now morphed into being called the European Union. This state would have many nations as members, all governed and controlled by one government, the European Union. Control of making our own individual laws on tax, employment, justice, social laws, the economy, our foreign policies, and defence, amongst others, would become a product of our imagination. How true has this become? Do not most of us fondly imagine that the present Conservative government is making our laws? In 2016, today, roughly 80% of all our laws are already being made in Brussels, a foreign country, by people we didn't elect, by people we don't even know. Case in point, the terrible, heartbreaking tragedy of the flooding going on up north at the moment. What is largely responsible for this? Guess what? The EU Water Framework Directive, which was brought into force in the year 2000. Did you know that? I didn't. This directive made it virtually impossible for the rivers to be dredged, which is how Britons have controlled flooding for hundreds of years. Not only that, the material that used to be dredged up from the rivers was often used to shore up the banks and make them taller, wider or stronger, depending on what was thought to be needed. The EU Water Framework Directive forbids this. This vital method of defending against flooding, the use of material dredged from the river, is considered by the European Union to be hazardous waste, and it must be thrown away and disposed of, or else we will be fined. Personally, I can find no words to express my disgust for this. Absolutely none. Just one more thought before I wrap up this video, pinched from a friend of mine who I'm sure will not object to my using this example. Imagine that I said to you one day, "Hey there, I've got a great business proposition for you. You give me £55 and in return I'll give you back £27.50. Good deal, don't you think? I wonder how many of you would think that was a good deal, or it made a lot of sense. Business sense, I mean. After all, you would be losing £27.50. Now imagine those figures being multiplied by 1 million. That would be 55 million I would take from you, and I would generously give you back 27.5 million. Good deal? Well, this is the approximate figure we pay to the European Union every single day for our membership, and in return they give us 27.5 million for farming, subsidies, grants, businesses, etc. a day, and crap laws that flood our rivers and cause untold misery to hard-working British people. Many other laws that cause us misery that we don't know about and which I will tell you about later. Where does the other 27.5 million go? No one knows. There are only two answers in my mind to all of this. I don't know about you, and I hope you agree with me. Number one, as ordinary people, we are at war to prevent this country from being taken over and absorbed by a state called the European Union. Our politicians are corrupted, and the European Union is corrupt. We are not. Our fight is on the side of right. Right is always stronger than wrong, as long as we are united. United to take our country back. To take back the right to make our own laws. The right to preserve our culture and heritage. The right to be able to pass these on to our children and grandchildren. All the rights and freedoms that we thought we had, but are now discovering were being taken away, little by little, over the last few decades, so that we wouldn't notice. United we can and will win them back. Number two, this means we must get off our backsides and vote resoundingly in our millions for Brexit. Leave, 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 leave. Please like, subscribe and share this video as much as you can, because people really do need to know the truth. Thank you.